Hey guys, welcome back. We're doing our little segment here for what the hell is an AR-15. And so last video you saw me build out the lower receiver and with some parts and pieces about what it's all about. Now it's time to build out this upper receiver with the handguard and barrel and everything. And so we'll talk about the parts and pieces as we go along with that. The components that we're using, the chassis that we used, if you remember, is an Aero Precision M4E1 chassis. That's the model that they have. It's a little different than just a standard mil-spec unit. When I say mil-spec, remember that's the military specifications when this unit was built back in the 60s for the military, when they adopted it from Colt. You have mil-spec, meaning that all these units, most of the AR-15s will be able to interchange with each other, but there are some units that are a little different that aren't built standard mil-spec. Now the M4E1 components are mil-spec compatible. They will work on other lowers and other uppers, so they'll work with it, but you just don't get quite the features and benefits that you do out of as you do as the M4E1. So one of the things about the Aero Precision upper is the fact that it has the roll pin that is screwed in, right? It has a threaded roll pin in here that holds in your forward assist. We're not going to take that apart since it's already in there, but it makes it a lot easier. Instead of having to hammer that roll pin in, all I'm actually doing is push in my forward assist and drop that roll pin in place and screw it down. So super easy. Alright, so one thing that we are going to do is we're going to change out this dust cover. So nothing wrong with the old school mil-spec dust cover, but we want to upgrade that. We want to go to next level. Strike Industries does a really nice polymer dust cover that has some features and benefits to it that I'll show you when we get to that. So we just basically pull the pin out. When we pull said pin out, you'll have a spring that comes out with it, and that's what helps allow that door to spring open like it does. Alright, so now we've pretty much got a stripped upper. So one of the things that we do different here than most people who do some gunsmithing for you or assembly is we can, if you're wanting to build a bolt gun accuracy out of a AR, there's some things that you need to do to make it better. So one of the things that we do is hone the upper. Now, what do I mean when I say hone the upper? When you have an upper receiver like this, whether it be Cerakoted or anodized, you can actually have high spots in it, right? So even the most precise, most precision unit can't always guarantee that there's not a high point in the flatness of this receiver. Now, why that's important is because your barrel actually mates into this, and you want that to be flat and true. So we're not going to go into that today, but just know that we can hone your upper as part of the service that we provide here. So we are using, for this build, our good friends at Boss Barrels. Alright, so Boss has this carbon fiber barrel for us. This unit is actually done in 6mm arc. So, but they do make this in different calibers and different options. But this is one of their carbon barrels that they offer. And guys, the fit and finish on this thing is awesome. How smooth it is on transitions. It's just a great barrel. So the benefit of carbon here, if this barrel was a stainless barrel, was a complete stainless barrel, it'd be a bull barrel of this nature, and how heavy it would be. So the benefit that you get out of the carbon is I get the strength of that heavy steel. So I get all that strength out of the steel that we want, but none of the actual extra weight. So we're going to go with our carbon barrel, and as you see, it just slips right in, right? Typically slips right in. So when it doesn't slip in like that, part of that issue is because of the Cerakote. This unit has been Cerakoted and having some of the extra layers there. So that's where, when we hone it, that helps take care of that and you don't have those issues. So so your barrel would slip in and get it taken care of. So let's go ahead and just kind of get it on there. Hey guys, since this one has the Cerakote on it, like it is, I'm going to go ahead and hone this upper so that we make sure we get a good true on that and mates right up to the metal itself and everything's flush like it should be. So let's get that honed out. Stop a second and show you what we do whenever honing, why it's important and what it does for you. So if you look at the end of this now, before the whole thing was all brown because of the Cerakote. Now you can see on here where the high spots are, where it's silver in some part and brown on others. That means that the end of that was not completely true. That wasn't flat. So if it's not flat and flush like it should be, well then when you tighten that barrel up on there, it may not be completely straight and flush like it should be. So that's what the honing is doing for it, is this is taking this down to where it's completely true and we don't have that barrel wanting to be canted in any way. So you can see where the shiny part of the silver is versus the dull part of what Cerakote steel was. So we'll finish honing this out and get it put up. Okay guys, we got the end of our upper receiver honed out and looking good. So one thing to make sure you do that we always want to do whenever we work on it or do something like that, especially with that grit from when we honed it, we'll make sure we clean it up. So we've been using Lucas for a long time, or for a good while now. They got their whole gun cleaning product line, and it just works. It's just great stuff and does a good job. So we try to keep a full line of that here at the shop. And so if you need everything from the gun cleaner to gun oil, it's great stuff. So it does a great job. So one of the things that we're going to do is I'm going to take a little Lucas lithium grease, just a little dab will do you, and I put that around my barrel itself, the barrel extension here. So and it's just little things, right? So it's not necessary, it's not that you have to do that, but it's just the little things that we try to do that make it better. So alright, get everything set, lined up. Now we can come in with our barrel nut, just for the sake of time today. Which, remember, after this is over, we're going to tear everything apart, make sure we go out all the way through it, and tighten everything up. Just want to get through it for you for the video today. So normally we do an anti-seize compound on here to keep you from having to worry about that. So we're going to put our barrel nut on now. That's what this is the barrel nut that comes with our handguard. So you might notice there is a couple of things that we've done from Real Avid that we use. Real Avid, they make everything from gun cleaning products, like cleaning kits and different stuff. This is a vise block, an upper vise block that they make. It does a real good job for us. We do have their vise as well. We use it pretty regular also. And one of my favorite things is their torque wrench kit, and I use it all the time. Their kit that they have does come with multiple different heads and different units that is used with it. But the thing about Aero Precision, they do have their own barrel nut. So Aero Precision has its own barrel nut wrench. So even though Real Avid does have come with a lot of their different heads that go with their Master Fit torque wrench, we still have to use Aero Precision's barrel nut wrench. Alright, so you always want to make sure that you follow specs on this, and we won't get into that. Just make sure you read your instructions on following your torque specs. So we're going to, I'm just going to snug it up today, or right now. My Wilton block isn't actually tied down. We'll put it on the other one and get everything snugged up. But for the purposes, we wanted to get it to the point of being able to move forward. So, all right. So on this this particular unit does use a little different gas system. Okay. So what's the gas system? What are we talking about? What the hell is a gas system? This is a direct impingement, right? So there's two different types of units that come typically on AR-15s. You have the direct impingement system, and then you have a piston-driven system, right? So for what we're dealing with today, it's a direct impingement, okay? So the direct impingement system uses a gas block and a gas tube. All right, so what does that do? Well, the gas block is what's going to cover up this little hole in the barrel. You can see that little tiny hole that's right there in the barrel. Now, the way that works is whenever your round is in the chamber and you fire, you pull the trigger and it fires. All right, so how does a bullet come out? you have that little miniature explosion inside of there, and that creates the gas, right? So the gases are what pushes your bullet out the end of the barrel. So as it pushes the bullet out the end of the barrel, gas is going to come up through that little hole because it's going everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. So it comes up into that little hole, and then from that little hole it's going to go down into the gas block, which will then go down the gas tube. Okay, and we'll get more into that system in just a second. So I'm going to take this unit that's already assembled here, guys, and let you see the gas system a little easier. So it's one that's already complete. So what you have here is a gas block and a gas tube that goes back into the upper receiver. So we'll get into the bolt carrier in just a minute. But so when the bullet fires, that gas is pushing that bullet out the end of the barrel. Well, some of that's going to come up into that hole in the barrel, and as it comes into that hole, then it comes down this gas tube. Right. So when it comes into the gas tube into your into the upper receiver here, it hits what's called a gas key on the bolt carrier group, which helps motivate that bolt carrier group back out of the chamber, pulling the spent round out and ejecting it and allowing the new round to come back in. So that's what the finished product is going to look like. So what we're putting on this unit today is actually a product from Superlative Arms, right? They make a bleed off system for your gas block. So in other words, what this does is it's not just choking it down. A lot of your adjustable gas blocks will actually just control the size of the hole that's in here, and instead of allowing certain amount of gas to come through that hole, or the full amount of gas to come through the hole, it will constrict it, and you only can allow so much gas to get in that hole and then down your tube. Well, what this does, it's different. The reason why Superlative is different, it actually allows that gas to come into the hole, but inside of this block, it varies it will direct the channel, or direct that gas into a different area, right? So it sends it off into a different direction. So it bleeds it off. That's why they call it a bleed off system. So it bleeds the excess gas off here instead of allowing extra gas down inside your barrel. Now, why does that matter? What's important about that? Well, typically you have less issues with cycling with a bleed off system. And the other thing is it helps keep it cleaner. If I've got less gas, less carbon and everything being trapped inside my barrel, coming back down the barrel, it's going to get onto my other spent rounds and come out the chamber whenever it opens up. Having the less gas really helps, especially if you suppress a unit. Whenever it gets suppressed, put a silencer suppressor on the end of it, you have that much more gas that you really need to have go somewhere, and having it misdirected or redirected by Superlative Arms really helps. So that's why we really like these gas blocks. They do a great job. They offer them in both the clamp-on style, like this guy is, or the actual set screw style from the bottom. So we'll be using one of these units today. So attaching to this will be the gas tube. So Aero Precision does this gas block, and what's different about it, this one is what they call melanite coated. Okay, so what is that? Well, that means it's black. All right, so instead of it being stainless steel or shiny stainless, it's black. Most of the gas block or gas tubes that you're going to see on guns, especially you buy one from the factory or whatever, they're going to be a bright silver like we saw on this unit, right, on this guy. Nothing wrong with that. This is still the same thing, does the same thing, same tube. This was silver, but they put a melanite finish on this that turns it black, that makes it black. So now you don't have that shiny silver thing sticking up underneath your barrel. So other people do it. Aero Precision does a great job, and they've done well for us. So I've actually switched over on this build and going to use a different gas block. Still Superlative, just instead of the clamp-on style, I wanted to go with the set screw style. Boss was kind enough to put the detent in the bottom of their barrel. So this, or the little indention in the bottom of the barrel. So the set screw itself will rest inside that bottom of that barrel. So I wanted to make use of that. So I switched over to this style block, and now we're going to install the gas tube to it. Now all this tube is, remember, this one's melanite coated in black, but all it is just a carrier for the gas. The gas is going to come up inside of the little hole. There's a little tiny hole inside of this gas block, and that hole will line up with a hole inside of this gas tube. And so when those go together, that will allow the gas to come down the tube itself and into our upper receiver. And we'll go over what that does in a minute once it gets there. Okay, so we're going to take our little roll pin. So we have a roll pin here. Again, we have a roll pin starter punch. And going back to how much nicer it is when you have the proper tools for the job, right? So, okay, that's got it started. You can double check it, make sure everything's still lined up. It all looks good. So now I'll take my larger roll pin, my larger punch, and then I can go in and okay. And if you have a set of actual roll pin punches, I can do one a little smaller and get it more detailed. But so that's good for what we're doing. All right. So now we go back to our upper receiver, and we'll be able to put this on. The superlative gas blocks do come with Allen wrenches and such, but I'm just not opening it right now. Alright, again, one of the things that we like to do when it comes to screws, we like to do some sort of a thread locker on that. I don't want it to be something that's completely permanent, but I want to make sure that it's going to stay. For this particular application, I'm going to use some VC3. It's a little different component than the last one that I used, but the VC3 is something that's even more reusable and has proven to be a superior product. Really good stuff from VibraType VC3. So now what we're going to do is as you can see, our gas tube is going to slide up inside of the upper receiver. Okay, and now remember, like I told you, on the bottom of this there's a divot. On the bottom of this there's a divot. And so we know that our set screw is going to go into that divot. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually look at it from the bottom side and line that up before I get started. So I can see that my divot is right there. So I'll hold it in place and go ahead and start my set screw. And I know that I'm in the proper location. So now some of you may look at that and say, well, that's red Loctite. No, it's not red Loctite, it's actually reusable, but it won't allow these threads to come loose. Okay, so we'll go in and snug this down even more after. All right, so that gets us to that point of where we want to be there. Now we've got to talk about what goes into this. Normally, before you put your barrel nut on a traditional dust cover, you'll need to have that installed, but remember we pulled that off when we got started. So let's go ahead and just put our front piece on here. Okay, now Aero Precision has a proprietary locking system for their handguards, or for this particular handguard, and so it's pretty easy to use. They even send a little tool with it. So I will put this in, kind of get it started here. Pretty simple to use. Now I just got it snug there. We'll go back in with one of the other tools and get it good and tight. But now we have installed the handguard. You see with the length of this barrel and gas system, our adjustable gas block there is easy to get to. Makes it easy to use. All right, so let's go ahead, while we're still concentrating on this, let's go ahead and put our dust cover on. So this dust cover is a polymer dust cover from Strike Industries. What's different about it, they've got some real nice ones that I've been using that has an American flag motif on it, kind of an impression on it. So anyway, this one is even cooler. It has Texas on it, and with Texas flag and such. Even when you open the dust cover, so don't mess with Texas. So it's a nice little piece. All right, so what's different about this dust cover than the other dust covers out there? One, it's polymer. Well, why do I want one that's polymer? A couple of different reasons. One, it's not going to affect any finish that you have on the gun. So if you have a gun that's got something on there that you don't want to get scratched up, or something special, you don't want it to affect the finish in any way, the polymer dust covers won't hurt anything. But the other benefits to these are you don't have a rod sticking through it, so it's easy to install, put on, and take off. And the thing that I like the most about it is the little ball bearing on top is adjustable. So I can go in with a small screwdriver and adjust the tension on that ball bearing, so that if it gets loose or something over time, I can actually adjust it, tighten it, or loosen it as needed. So now to install it, it's pretty simple. You can take anything, something like this Allen wrench. I take and I roll the spring around. You can see where the spring itself is. So you got to roll that spring up. And then we go to get it in place. You put the one side in. Roll it with your left hand up, just so you can control it a little better. Okay, so now I've got that spring under tension now. And then I come in with my tool, whatever it may be, just something small. And this other end is retractable. So if you look, you can see I can pull back on it right here, and it retracts the end of it. So I'm able to come in, retract the end, put that in place, release my tension. Now all of a sudden I have a dust cover. So now I can put my dust cover on, and it's a good fit and finish. So you will notice sometimes with some of these units that they may not pop out really active or real easy, and that's only because of the Cerakote finish on it. I'll work that in a little bit and it'll be good. So so that's got our new dust cover on there, and we're ready to go with that. All right, so the only things that we have left is putting in our charging handle and our bolt carrier group. Okay, so this is a bolt carrier group that's actually made by a company called Toolcraft. So Toolcraft makes most of the bolts on the market, all right? Or they make a lot of them. A lot of different companies will use them. All your stuff from PSA and I think Arrows or Arrow uses them. There's a lot of different companies that will use Toolcraft bolts, and even more, a lot of your barrel companies will use Toolcraft bolt heads for their patterns. So Toolcraft is just a company that's been around a long time. They've kind of perfected making these bolts and do a really good job. So this one does have a flat dark earth PVD finish on it, so it's a little bit different. There's some different finishes out there that we can get on them that still allow them to operate and work really well. You've got, one of my favorite is a nickel boron finish, and so it normally is a bright silver. This one's been used, has seen some use, but still holds up really well. So, and they do make nitride and phosphate bolts. Personally, I like at least going with nitride and above on your finishes, just because it's a smoother, slicker finish and doesn't allow stuff to build up on it like the other ones do. So when we talk about a bolt carrier group, you heard the word group there. That means that this thing is made up of multiple things to make a bolt carrier. group. So this is very important as a firearm owner. You want to maintain your firearms, and for ownership of an AR-15, this is part of it. So knowing how the bolt carrier group is made up. So what I did is I removed this little cotter pin, right? So I took that little pin out, and by taking this pin out, it allows my firing pin to drop, because when this is inside here, this pin sits right there holding that in place. You can see that, if that makes sense. So I take that pin out, my firing pin falls out. So now, next thing that comes out is this little piece up here. This is a pivot pin, right? It's called a pivot pin. And I pivot it around and pull it out. So the pivot pin is the piece that holds the bolt head itself in place. So this is the bolt head, okay? So this is your bolt, this is the carrier, and all of this stuff together is a bolt carrier group. Now, this thing on top here that's sticking up, that black thing, is called a gas key. Now, remember when we were talking about the gas tube and such on this one? That gas tube actually comes down inside here and sticks out the bottom and comes into this this bolt carrier group. So it's easier to show you on this one since it's silver. Bolt carrier that's inside of there. As we pull that back, there's our bolt carrier group. Now if you look really closely inside of here, you're going to see the gas tube, okay? So that gas tube mates inside of this gas key. So when this thing is inside, you'll see how that gas tube goes inside that gas key. And so when your bullet fires, right, when you pull the trigger and it fires, your bullet's going down the barrel, your gas comes into the gas block, comes back down, then it goes inside of the gas key and starts motivating that bolt carrier back, right? So it's what forces your bolt carrier back. And then at that point, your bolt carrier is going to slides back into that buffer tube, into your buffer system, right? So your bolt carrier at this point will slide back in here, and then your spring and buffer that we saw in here before is going to force it to come back forward, and as it comes forward, it picks up the next round out of the chamber or out of the magazine and puts it into the chamber ready to go. So what's important about your bolt carrier and why we take it apart, other than just for general cleaning, this is going to be really hard to see, but inside of here you have rings around this back side. So what these rings do, it helps keep gas from bleeding back. Inside your gas key, there's a hole that's in there, and then your gas actually comes into this point here. And as it comes into that point, it's what helps move it out of the chamber. You know, you got to get that broken loose out of the chamber and pulling that cartridge out. So you don't want the gas to expand past that or to get past it. So you end up with things where cycling issues and stuff. Now this actually works a lot like the rings on a piston, right, on an engine. For those of you who are familiar with engines, built engines and stuff, you know, rings on a piston will allow oil and stuff from passing through. Kind of works the same way here. You've got 3 different tiny rings here, and the biggest point of that is you want to make sure that the hole where those rings separate don't get lined up. You want to have them orientated in different orientated. You want to have them in different locations whenever they're inside of that gas, inside of your bolt carrier, so that way the gas can't pass through that hole. So, all right. So then when we go to put it back together, it's pretty simple on an aspect of there's a hole that goes through it, right? That's for our pivot pin. That's what holds it inside of the bolt carrier. Now, well, you look at it and it's like, well, which way's up? Well, it's going to be the easiest thing to tell you is when you go to put it in there, if you can't stick your pivot pin back inside of it, then you've got it upside down, because it is a tapered hole and it will only go in one way. Now, the reason why it has to be turned the other direction is your extractor on your bolt. So your bolt itself is made up of multiple things, being the bolt head. You have an extractor that's here on the side. This piece is an extractor, which is kind of like a little claw. Think of it as a claw that holds onto the back of the shell, the back of the empty cartridge. It's going to pull that cartridge out. And then the other thing that's inside of this bolt is called a plunger, and that's this little round piece that's on the end of it. And that little round piece that's there actually is spring loaded. Now, that's all under pressure whenever you have a round inside of your chamber, inside the barrel. And so as you pull that, as that bolt carrier comes back, and that bolt head comes out, it's pulling that spent cartridge out. And then when it gets to a certain point, it's gonna cause it to flick out onto the ground, you know, outside of your gun. So, so that's how it's made up. And because of that, it has to be turned a certain direction so it will exit out the port on your upper. So now we drop our pivot pin in, and we put it back into place. And now we put our firing pin back into place. And then we can put our little cotter pin back in there. Okay? And that's how our bolt carrier is made up. And so from here, we'll have our charging handle. So we're gonna go with a Rise Armament, the RA212 charging handle. So some of you may like a ambidextrous handle, and that's fine. That just means the other side of the handle, if you pull on it, will actually operate the latch mechanism. So for the one that we're using, for what this gentleman wanted, was the extended charging handle, or the charging handle with an extended latch. Now, something that's important to me is charging handles, because I've had a lot of issues in the past where a lot of them have failed. We've had what doesn't look like there's a problem with it, but until you really get into it, you find what the issue is. The issue that we run into is some of the cheaper handles being 60-61 aluminum versus 70-75 aluminum. So the grade of aluminum, meaning the strength of how it's made, makes a difference. I've seen these things actually bow to where, as a person pulls on this charging handle, they pull on it and they pull back and they pull up as they pull back on it. And what they're actually doing is they're putting a bow in this charging handle over time. And that will get to where you can't move it, right? It'll be so stuck in this upper, it doesn't even want to move. So it's important, the strength of your charging handle makes a difference. Might not be anything that you ever deal with, but it can happen. I've seen some over travel on bolt carriers as well, where it mushroomed this head out a little bit, and then it gets stuck inside of this upper. So there's all kinds of things that could happen, but it's important, especially if you're doing a build, just spend the extra money on a good charging handle. They're not that much more expensive, and you'll thank yourself in the long run. The other thing that you'll thank yourself for, whether we take your current charging handle, mil-spec handle, or something else that you have, or these little extensions on here, if you run any sort of optics on top of it, some sort of a scope or anything up here, you'll thank yourself for being able to have this extension on there so that you can operate that firearm easily and safely from the top. So being able to grab a hold of that little extension makes a difference. So now when you put your charging handle in, it's like, okay, let's shove it in. Well, that doesn't work real well. So inside of this upper, it's really hard to see, but you'll learn as you're putting it together. You have to basically go in to the main body of your upper, the big hole, and then find the little slots. There's a little slot up in the top that are cut out for that charging handle to slide into. Why is that? What difference does that make? Well, that keeps it from sliding out, right? That keeps you from pulling so hard on your charging handle that it comes out the top. So now it gives you that ability to lock it into place with those little notches on the side. Those two little notches there. Makes a difference. So keeps it in place, so that goes in there. Make sure that your bolt is in the forward position, right? So it's all the way extended out. And now that will slide in there just like so, and then it locks in place. And everything should go in and made in really easy. You should be able to just push it in with your finger. If it doesn't, then you probably got a problem. There's probably something else going on. So, but the long and short of it, that's about it, guys. Oh, something we didn't point out about the upper. Let's go back in time a little bit. For what the heck is this thing on the side? What is a forward assist? The hell is a forward assist doing on there? What does it do? Well, think back in wartime. Let's think back to Vietnam. And you have your gun and you're in the middle of being surrounded by the enemy, and you forgot to put one in the chamber. Oh crap. So now you've got to be extremely quiet to be able to pull that gun back and load one into the chamber and let it down, because under normal circumstances it's pretty loud when you do that. So what they did is, by putting these little teeth, almost, I guess you could say, these little ridges on the side, the bottom side of your forward assist looks like a tooth, right? It's got a little claw on the end of it. Now what that little claw does, it allows me to push that in and be quiet when I do it. You can see how it's ratcheting in. Okay, so the benefit of that is I'm being quiet and I'm letting this thing down. I let it down easy as I can, but man, it's not all the way in the battery. I know it's not in the chamber properly. So now I can push it in, right? See, I can push that all the way in and be quiet with it. Let's say for modern day society, you know, for what we do with it today, say I'm hunting and there's a group of hogs or there's a deer over there and I forgot to load one in the chamber and I got to be quiet with it. So this is going to let me be quiet, let me be able to take that and let it down easy and use that forward assist to move it in there. So, okay guys, I think that covers most of it. Just let us know if we missed something. And so at this point, you take your upper, you put it on your lower, you've got a rifle, you're good to hunt. Go with whatever muzzle device you want to go with. I know they're going to use a silencer, which silencer is a whole nother world, and we'll get into that soon with another video, but at this point we've built a rifle. So we have gunsmithed this rifle together and got it ready to go for this customer, and you can too. So we can help you. We've got chassis, we've got parts and pieces. We can help you with everything that you need to build a rifle. So do come see us, and we'll help you any way we can. So thanks a lot. Make sure that you subscribe and like our channel, and tune in for the next one. Thanks guys.